Welcome to the Whole Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you become a fat burner, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hi, everybody. It's Debbie Potts with a new episode of the Whole Athlete Podcast on audio and video. You can find us on YouTube, the Whole Athlete Podcast.com website as well. So Brock Armstrong is my guest co-host today that we've had on the past, all the way from Canada over the border.
Canada.
So
I
Brock,
like how Americans say that. You add a whole other diphthong that doesn't exist.
I know, I'm Canadian, but I've been here since I'm 13 years old. But it's funny how people do think, you say Vancouver, but people call it as Canada. Like it's, Canada is Vancouver. It's not like one town. So I wanted to talk to you and just have a conversation of kind of what I've been doing last few months locally and I was doing with Jimmy Moore last weekend too at the Nutritional Therapy Conference, is what's interesting me is sharing people's why. Like, what's your story? Why do we do what we do? What's our mission? What's our purpose? And we talk about this in my mastermind group I'm in. But I find it interesting, people like you and like Brad Kearns and Jimmy Moore, like all these people, we do these podcasts, we're writing, we're educating, and it's not like we're millionaires, but we do it for a reason. It's not for money.
Far from it.
Because I do this, I actually pay money to do this.
Exactly. Yeah. Most podcasts, there's 175 or 185,000 podcasts on Apple Podcasts on iTunes. And I think it's like 1 or 1.7% or something of them actually make money.
Wow.
So that's ridiculous. People really like to podcast because the vast majority of people are paying money to have a podcast.
Yeah. Because you have to pay a hosting fee every month. And then I pay an editor to edit this and put it together. And iTunes, you have to pay annual fee. I mean, it costs money. So we do this out of passion. But now you're doing a new podcast, the Mr. Fit Guy.
A new old
one. You took over from Ben Greenfield and you're continuing it on your own. So, and you've worked with different companies, and you worked with Primal, and you worked with Bulletproof, and you worked with Ben. What's your story, Mr. Brock Armstrong?
My story is long and convoluted. I'm basically my entire life has been very active. I've always been I was an active child. I was an active teenager, young adults, all the way into I'm 46 now, and I'm showing no signs of slowing down. In fact, in some ways, I'm still gaining momentum. But I think because I had a life that was really very much focused on being active. I played video games like every other kid, and I like to watch TV like every other kid as well. But the vast majority of the time I spent playing hockey, riding my bike. I was in dancing from a very early age. I did Ukrainian dancing because my family's history or ancestry is mostly Ukrainian, and that led me into ballet and into modern dance and stuff like that. So really, my journey started as an active being on this planet. And I think when you say what is your why, my why has changed many, many times. And I think that is absolutely healthy and important for us to change our why. Having a why is as important, but I think equally important is changing that why and finding new whys throughout life. So really, at first I was kind of selfish about my why. My why was really all about me. I wanted to look good. I wanted to feel good. I wanted to be able to jump over fences on my bike and do all kinds of fun stuff when I was a young adult. Then my why has really shifted a few times in my adult life, to starting with wanting to coach people in marathons and triathlons and things like that, to really be badass athletes. Mm-hmm. Now I find myself sort of not abandoning the idea of being a badass athlete, but I think you and I absolutely have the same passion, which is to be a badass human who's healthy and happy and well balanced and all of that kind of stuff before or put that ahead of being a badass athlete. If you don't have that health and that longevity and everything in place, then the badassness needs to be put on hold. Where I think I used to be kind of the opposite, where it was like, it's like the Olympic athletes that would, what was the statistic that 57% of them would take a pill that guaranteed them a gold medal, but would result in them, or could result in them dying in the next 5 years? It was like this ridiculous thing. Like, we humans are terrible. We really have a bad, we're not able to see long into the future. We're so much about the now that we even will sort of sacrifice. It's like, oh yeah, I'll take the pill now, get the gold, and then worry about that death thing later. Like, that's, it's not very clever of us. Us humans are not known for our cleverness in a lot of ways. So yeah, I think I answered the question somewhere in all that rambling about my why, and also sort of where I've come from.
So why do you host podcasts? You've worked with Bulletproof, you work with Greenfield Systems, and you work with Primal. Why do you like to do this type of jobs, and why are you doing the Get Fit Guy and you're doing coaching yourself? What drives you?
Yeah, that's there's sort of a whole other philosophy there, I guess. I've only been to, well, I went to college twice. And the first time was for theater arts. So I have a degree, or I have a diploma, not even a degree, in theater, musical theater to be exact. I like to sing and I like to dance. But then my second attempt at going to school was actually in digital arts and media. So that's really where I sort of learned the chops to be able to edit podcasts, edit video. The web wasn't really that big back then. This is in the early 2000s. Actually, it was 1999 when I went back to school. So the internet was there, obviously, but it certainly didn't host, like, YouTube hadn't been invented back then. So
you're ahead of the ball game.
Yeah. But the thing about podcasts, I discovered podcasts as something I wanted to listen to in about 2003, 2004. And suddenly realized that a guy like me who had no interest in going to university, barely had an interest in going to college. Like, I didn't even finish that second diploma in digital arts and media. I got halfway through, got a job, and bailed. So I only have 1.5 diplomas. So yeah, somebody like me who doesn't necessarily like going to school, isn't interested in going to university, podcasts were like this amazing opportunity to learn all kinds of crazy stuff. Pick and choose what kind of stuff you want to learn on the day, and really just pick up so much information, so much entertainment. And it blew my mind that this was something that somebody could potentially do for a living. Like, I remember the first time I listened to Ben Greenfield when he was the Get Fit Guy back in, I think it was like 2007, 2008 maybe, and the nutrition diva, Monica Reinagel, both on the Quick and Dirty Tips Network, where I am now. When I was listening to their podcast, I was just like absolutely inspired. And I immediately started thinking, what on earth am I an expert in that I could have a podcast on? And immediately thought of like web design or web building or something to do with that. But already there was so many podcasts out there about that, even back in those days, that I didn't pull the trigger, and instead became support staff for many podcasts in order to help them get their message out. And also, selfishly, the great thing about editing podcasts and being sort of support staff for these podcasts is I get to be paid to listen to these amazing people talk about amazing things. So most of my education as a health and fitness practitioner really did not come from certifications. It didn't come from going to school. It didn't come from any of that stuff. I did some of that stuff. I definitely have some certifications, but it is so secondary to the stuff that I've learned while working for Primal Blueprint and Primal Endurance and Endurance Planet, and working with you and working with Ben Greenfield and working with Nutrition Diva and so on and so on. Fat Burning Man, like the list goes on and on. Mark Devine, Commander Mark Devine from SealFit. I've learned so much from all of my clients who've actually paid me to do this learning.
So they paid for your podcast college on
there you go. Yeah.
a biohacker or, health and fitness. It is.
Oh yeah. How can I leave Dave Asprey off that list? Oops.
Oh yeah. Dave
I learned
Asprey
so much
too.
from Dave.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I think I got into learning more, is when I started listening to podcasts. And I found even organizing the health fair I did in January at my Fitness Forward studio, biohacking event. I realized no one even knew what biohacking was. Like, what?
Yeah. We take it for granted.
I mean, it's in our own world, being on a podcast that's health and fitness and nutrition related, that it's a whole different area, because everyone else is reading magazines, and there comes out now with keto is an outside magazine, or low carb. I mean, but then it contradicts itself with another next page article is saying this. And so I think the mainstream media doesn't really give the right information, or mixed signals. And then people in podcasts know the word biohacking and bulletproof coffee and all this stuff that, like, oh, we've known that for how many years, and now it's becoming trendy.
But if you listen to some of those other podcasts, like I used to listen to a podcast called Marathon Training Academy, and those guys don't talk about low carb, high fat, anything. They don't talk about biohacking, anything. They're very much still in the, and I don't mean to present this in a bad way. There's absolutely room in this industry for everybody.
Yeah.
But they're still talking about the same stuff that I was learning in my certifications back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And absolutely those things work. So like, it's really easy, I think, for people like us who are on the cutting edge, and we're really trying to be the dialed in athletes that we can, to almost poo-poo the old school stuff. But it's still very prevalent out there. And I think the reason why that's very in the forefront of my mind is the Get Fit Guy podcast that I'm doing now on the Quick and Dirty Tips Network is a podcast that's for people who just want, and it's in the name, quick and dirty tips to get fit. And so I find myself having to really suppress my my desire to, or my sort of natural inclination to bring up all the biohacking stuff, and to be constantly talking about low fat or low carb, high fat, and stuff like that, and really just keep it very simple, very actionable, because you don't want to, I think there's a time and a place to introduce those kinds of things. And that's what this podcast that we're doing right now is for. And that's what Bulletproof Radio is for, and those kind of places. But just sort of throwing people into the deep end, like if Outside Magazine just suddenly abandoned all their Gatorade sponsorship, they'd probably lose all their readership, because they'd be like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting dilemma, but it's also what's so wonderful about podcasts. Like,
you can talk about anything.
You can talk about anything, and you can also like build an audience around anything.
Yeah. Which is what this podcast has evolved very much over the years, as we originally were Fit, Fat, Fast, and we talked about metabolic efficiency and eat fat to go longer and avoid the sugar and the sugar spikes. But over the years, as I've evolved, that especially the last 2 years doing nutritional therapy practitioner school, so now I'm an NTP, that it's, you really learn a lot from your own personal experience, your own journey. But that's why I changed the name to The Whole Athlete, because, and what the holistic method is about, you can't just talk about training and nutrition, because there is not one size fits all. Not everyone needs to be keto, and not everyone should be low carb, high fat. Everybody is different. And really what I've learned a ton of when I work with my NTP clients now is that adrenal stress is everywhere. The digestion system, it's not what you eat, but are you able to absorb that is the biggest part. It's like, yeah, you can eat all that great food, but are you even able to break down and digest and absorb that nutrients, and especially the fats? And then going into blood sugar regulation, what we talk about in nutritional therapy is that it's about balancing the blood sugar, keeping it, 70 to 90, not over 100. And then you can figure out, oh, wait, what macronutrients ratio do I need of fat, carbs, or protein? So for me, I'm trying to share that on the podcast, and not just be saying one size fits all, but let's look at the individual. And the holistic method is talk about for the whole athlete to, I say, transform the whole you from the inside out, is working on these 8 elements. Because I think we got stuck in just talking about, train by 180 minus your age, Maffetone formula, and eat this nutrition. But there's so much more to improving your performance in triathlons or whatever endurance sport you're doing, or just to get stronger and more fit than we're getting into.
So it sounds to me like your why, your broader why hasn't changed. Like your broad why is still to create some healthy, happy individuals out there who can perform at their peak. But the way that you're defining that why has really, would you say it's refined itself, or actually maybe it's broadened itself, maybe it's expanded?
What am I saying? Yeah, I think it's evolving, and it's continuously evolving as I learn more and working with clients and listening to podcast questions and what people, just observing more. And just after my journey with adrenal issues and HPA axis dysregulation is the technical name now. So short, it's just easier to say adrenal exhaustion, but it's really HPA axis that you're off balance from, that it disrupts every body system from having adrenal stress that I had. And so from my own experience and learning as a nutritional therapist how to help other people, it's looking at each person. And so I think for athletes, and what I want to share on the podcast, we've talked about happiness all December. Last month, I kept talking about recovery and talking infrared saunas, cryotherapy, floating. I think all of that, like the recovery part's just as important or more important than the training. And if you're not detoxifying your body at night, you're not repairing and getting all the benefits while you're supposed to be sleeping, because we're so sympathetic dominant. And so I just am finding all this new information. It's not really biohacking, but let's look at what your nervous system's supposed to do. When you're supposed to be sleeping, when you're eating, parasympathetic, it's your rest, digest, and repair system. And so anyways, I try to my goal is to share different topics, and on the podcast and in my book I just published on Amazon, The Holistic Method, it is a chapter on each of the 8 elements that you and a bunch of other people I've interviewed over the years are in there, because I think you need to look at the whole picture.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Something you mentioned there about like how sleep and things like that could easily be spun into a biohack these days. And I feel like there's been a lot of that, like calling soup stock, like boiling bones and calling it bone broth. And it's like the new healthy thing to do. And it's like, no, we've been making soups.
It's been around a long time.
Like putting bones into a pot and letting it boil for 24 or 48 hours is like as old as humans, I'd say, or as old as humans have been cooking things. So it is kind of funny to think of sleep as being a biohack or biohacking your sleep. And I think that's sort of where we lose people sometimes. But anyway, what I wanted to bring up was, so like when you started podcasting, when you were doing the Fit Fat Fast podcast, you had just sort of gotten into the high fat, low carb and training a little bit slower. But it wasn't until after that you really started to realize how your lifestyle had impacted yourself as an athlete, right? Mm-hmm. It was actually like you were already immersed in that world before you really realized what had happened to you.
Yes. So, I mean, I was doing training with Mark Allen, doing 180 miles per age heart rate for all my endurance training when I started. Wow. 2001 was my first Ironman. And then I started doing Mark Allen's training program in 2004. But even 2001, I already was into heart rate training. And then I wrote about my whole story, and life is not a race. It was I think writing the book was my own personal therapy session to go back and like, how did I ever get to this point in 2013 when we're at the Superhuman Coach conference that Ben held in Spokane, that learning all this stuff about heart rate variability and, metabolic efficiency, but then about cortisol and adrenal exhaustion. So I was up to that point, 2004 to 2012, I was doing the low carb, higher fat. As we got more into metabolic efficiency, I did metabolic testing on people. So I was learning that. But I think when I tweaked my diet to be not afraid of fat, which I was like everyone else for majority of my life, was when we started podcasting 2012. So maybe it was, 2010, somewhere around there. So it's already doing that. And then it's learning, then you learn about intermittent fasting and doing all this, you can. But I think I was doing all of that and running my own business, and starting my own business is very challenging. And I know working with a lot of people over the years that they work as a nurse or a doctor, and they're working night shifts, and they start training for an Ironman. And I think what I try to share on this podcast is everyone was, wanting to do a half Ironman or Ironman, but then they don't realize they're already, that's 15, 20 hours a week they're adding on to a full-time schedule. Plus, if you are having any social life or family and kids, it's a
Forget
job.
about that.
So how do you fit it all in? We've talked over the years, and it's more beneficial. I think we learn now to do more of the minimalist training and fit it in. Or why are you doing Ironman in the first place?
Yeah, why do you want to do this?
Yeah, why start with Olympic triathlon? And so, what your question was basically, I think about nutritionally, I was figuring out the low carb, low sugar stuff myself during this podcast, but I think I added on so much more, which is why I like to talk the holistic method, the sleep and the stress, the other elements in the holistic method that we didn't talk enough about until it was my 2013 turning point of my whole life. As I knew it.
One of the things one of the reasons why I'm such a fan of your podcast and your writings and stuff is because you have really truly lived through this and experienced it yourself and experienced it with your clients as well, which is kind of unique in some ways. Because I've learned all about adrenal fatigue and I know about the HPA axis dysregulation and things, but it's all kind of theoretical in my mind. I've worked with a few clients that have had some issues that were perhaps borderlining on that. But the fact that you went through this, were able to recognize it in yourself, fix it in yourself, and then went on to get this enormous education afterwards makes you like it's beyond an expert. I was going to say pretty much an expert, but it's actually beyond an expert because you've got the deep education, but you've also got the understanding from inside. And I think anybody who's out there listening and suspects that they may have any of these problems, like Debbie's writing her handbooks and her book itself is a real Bible for a lot of this kind of stuff. I think you do a good job of really explaining it.
Well, thank you.
Is that the journey that you thought you would go on when you launched into this whole lifestyle?
No, it's ironically, I have a mastermind group I'm in for fitness professionals, Todd Durkin Mastermind, that we have.
Oh yeah, Todd Durkin.
Yeah, we have a retreat this March, and it's at Torrey Pines Hilton. And if you read my Life is Not a Race book, I started writing this book in 2013 after my retreat. There's a whole chapter called The Party Bus in my book. And I basically summarized, I threw up all over the bus because I drank, and you can't, when your adrenals are hit, you can't tolerate alcohol. And I found out something was wrong with me from this retreat. And we actually have the retreat in a couple of weeks as we're recording this at the same resort place. So it's really going to be kind of emotional for me going back 2013. It was this place that started this whole journey, and it's 5 years later. And this is part of why I'm so passionate about helping other people avoid what's gone through to me, because I still can't get my running up because it's too hard on my body. I'm not getting energy in and out of my cells. I'm not able to break down fat. Liver's congested. I mean, there's just a whole list of stuff that I've been working on. And that's why nutritional therapies, as a client of a nutritional therapist, has really been amazing for me, because no other doctors, naturopaths, you just get your lab results back and take what supplements. Well, and as an NTP, you work on a functional hands-on testing different reflex points in your body. Then we do muscle testing or neurolingual testing, supplement on your mouth and go back and test that point. And if it's better, like say 1 to 10, this was my liver gallbladder point here, third rib, that it was an 8, but then I put a supplement on that helped support my liver. Well, I went down to a 4, and it's just 30 seconds on your tongue.
Describe that a little bit better. I'm having trouble following it. So you were doing a particular movement?
So when we do a functional evaluation on a client as nutritional therapy practitioners, there's a whole 1-hour assessment. It's all different reflex points in your body. So say underneath on my 6th rib, there's a reflex point for a Chapman reflex for your stomach HCl. So I press on it.
That is supposed to be in our stomachs.
Yeah, exactly. Most people are hypochloremic. So you press on the point, I sink down. It's like a little pencil-sized spot. Okay. And I go off of it on it. So if I go on it, if that client has their stomach, there's something going on, their body will like, okay, that'll be a really sensitive point. So say,
so just by pushing it, you can feel like
I can touch it. Yeah. I mean, you have to be lying on a table. I have a massage table. I work on people.
Okay.
And so summarize long story, it's pressing on that point, but we do neurolingual testing that you can choose a supplement that supports, say, if it's berberine or if it's betaine, and we put the supplement that I'll check, you know, based on all this other information on their tongue. And then you just close your mouth, 10, 30 seconds later, you can taste it. You don't swallow it. I go back and palpate that spot.
Huh.
That supplement is what your body is asking for, what nutrients needing. That pressure point, that acupuncture, kind of think of that little trigger point, will be, say, a 3 or a 4 or even less. And they'll be like, okay, that's something we're going to look at doing. Next test is like a muscle test other people do. That's my training I'm doing this year, but it's fascinating. So then I know individually what that person's needs instead of just guessing based on your labs, based on your nutritional assessment that we did and your food log and symptoms. I'm going to give you this beta TCP for your gallbladder or whatever. Like, it's so crazy because now the other day I found someone, okay, they needed something to support their hypothalamus, pituitary support. And then another person just needed berberine to help their blood sugar regulation, and it just worked amazing. So another person, it wouldn't do anything. So that's what nutritional therapy thinks magical for, to help people. It's like, if you have unexplained symptoms and you're not getting better, I would go look up Nutritional Therapy Association webpage and find a practitioner near you to get that individualized testing, because it is amazing to, going back to 5 minutes ago when you asked me a question, is what, you know, how you get better. And what I've learned is, you know, getting that individualized testing on me personally, so I know I can get better. But that's why I share on the podcast, and I've been writing blogs and writing a new free ebook on liver and detoxification, because there's just so much more to look at. If you're not you're running better, if you're not performing well, you feel sluggish, you feel fatigued, you can't lose weight. I'm not, you know, and I don't like saying it's my age, because, you know, I'm 46 too. And I think that's cop out when people say, oh, I'm getting older, I'm getting fatter. I'm like, that's lame excuse.
That is not an excuse. I reject that reality.
Yeah.
Damn it.
I know.
So you were saying, so this is obviously it's narrowing down the diagnosis beyond doing just the blood tests and stuff. Do you need to do the blood tests ahead of time? Like, is that the good order to do it in?
I think it's beneficial. I've used Viome, which is a new program out there. You can look at Viome.com.
I've been thinking about doing that. Did you like it?
Yeah, just listen to the doctor, and you can become a Viome practitioner and be able to get certified by them to interpret the results. But right now, Viome is beneficial to get your gut biome tested. But the most important part, which I should pay more attention to, is the food sensitivity based on what your gut biome test is. So it has a whole, like, the red, green, yellow foods not to eat. So red, do not eat; yellow sometime; green all the time. That information tells you a lot. So that helps to give, as a practitioner, to get, here's my labs, here's, you know, but most people, doctors' labs, as you know, they don't really tell you anything. So I use athletes' blood tests, but we've had them on the podcast. They work for athletes. And
what's that one called?
Athlete blood test. They're out of Boulder, and it's excellent blood work to get done for athletes. And they have gold, silver, bronze packages. And you can mention the whole athlete and you can get in, and they'll give you consultation with the results, but it does a full profile, kind of like Wellness FX, but I find their price packages a little bit more affordable, and they give you, go through the results with Garrett Rock, who's a doctor that goes through them all. But yeah, I think getting lab work is really important for athletes, because we're putting our body through a lot. Plus, if you're working, you know, you're not a retired or a, you know, professional athlete, that you do have to work and to have a life besides, you know, training and then recovering and then training again. I think taking care of the whole you from the inside out is what I preach. And it starts at a cellular level, that you have to really work on your recovery by different methods than just, you know, having a nap. But
I don't want to get hung up on the testing, but I just wanted to ask a couple more things. I did the Biome test a couple of years ago, and I was really disappointed in what they actually provided. Like, all they did was sort of say, you're in the 90 whatever percentile of the population for the amount of bacteria you have in your body. And I think they listed the ones that were most prevalent, but that was about it. So it was left up to me to really go and do all the research that I needed to do to actually glean any information from that. So Viome actually gives you
well, so I'm just opening it up for you. The Viome is the same. When I talked to them last week in a nutritional therapy conference, like you'll have the app and it gives you the information, but the microbiome testing is so new and they don't have answers yet. So it's just kind of brand new science. You can get kind of what is in my belly. So theirs is like, it's all artificial intelligence too. So they're collecting all this data and it tells me, I can't really see on there, but wellness index, my gut diversity, the good guys, probiotics, my RNA, rare bacteria. So you can get it done, but I find the recommendations is what I can get use out of. And if I have a client taking it, you get, what vegetables I can have, fats, proteins, and which I can't have, which, could be apple cider vinegar was on my do not have list. So it's really fascinating because it's a lot of times it's foods that we eat all the time that we build those allergies to, what to minimize and foods to avoid, which is, well, beer. I never drink beer, but you can have beer on there, beet sugar, cane sugar, cottage cheese. So heavy cream, which I like to have in my coffee, milk, cheese, sheep milk, sour cream, wheatgrass, yogurt. I mean, that had a big old list, and butter is on there. So I haven't really been following it, honestly.
Oh, that made me gasp so much I choked.
I can't have heavy cream or my butter in my coffee. So that's why I think the Viome, I don't know if the Ubiome does that, but Viome.
When I did it, it may have stepped up, but when I did it, it didn't. So what do you think, like in terms of these tests being so new, like the things like the 23andMe test itself has been around for a while, but in the grand scheme of things, genetic testing is very brand new. Now we've got the microbiome tests, we've got the blood tests that are zooming in not just on our cholesterol, but on our lipid size and our lipid density. And now there's a whole other, the LPDA molecule that they're starting to pin cardiovascular disease on. And do you feel like it's still worthwhile to actually get your clients to do these tests, even though it is sort of not fringe, but just such a new science?
I like the athlete blood test. I think really is information that, we've had, but it's not the in-depth test that your doctor is going to give you based on insurance. So you do always have to pay out of pocket. So I suggest if people can afford it, it's $500, whatever package you get is around $500.
What are the things that you think are most beneficial from that test?
I find getting just like minerals, my vitamins like B's, my iron is, breaking that down, the thyroid. I haven't looked at my results for a while, but just getting more of the full breakdown. You can do the hormone panel, you can add on all the things. So it's more depth. I think the Viome test is helpful. Like I don't really know what the good guys are is blah, 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 these big, huge words. And my gut diversity. And I think what they're doing is starting a training program for practitioners like myself so I can understand, because I said, I don't understand how to read this myself. So I think it is early on, but I think it's beneficial to get because it says, my activity, what everyone is and what healthy is, but those are all based on artificial intelligence of everyone's data being collected and then figure out what is, because we don't have the norms yet. I think the microbiome is so new to test it, and this research and all these different, names that I don't know what they are.
Saccharomyces boulardii.
Yeah, they're the biggest. I don't know whoever invented all these words. Endococcus faecium and lactose.
They all sound like dinosaurs to me.
Yeah, and then Golda magna. So there's rare bacteria, but I'm like, is that good to have? Is it bad to have rare bacteria?
It seems like it should be good, right?
Yeah. Then my RNA. So this, I think, is good to do in the future because they are having this. Doctor just spoke on Sunday at this conference and talked about training us to interpret the results. Then I think it's a little easier than having, Vi on my app telling me what to do. But the eating part, I think, is why I would spend the money have a client spend the money, do the Viome to get what foods based on my gut biome, because that's the biggest limiter, I think, for people to recover. If you keep eating foods that are irritating your gut, we all have heard lots about leaky gut and gut inflammation. joint pain, skin, recover. I mean, there's so many things that all disease starts in your gut, and your gut and your brain are connected. So it's just so much if we can work on
is a second brain, according
gut.
to some people.
Yeah, you got your second brain in your gut and your brain. And I think we just need to look at what our nutrition and our absorption rate and what we're putting in the first place. So I think if you want to improve performance, you have to look at the whole picture, and look at getting these labs will help you. There is a simple, cheap way that you can test what foods you're allergic to. Do you know about that?
The skin test, like the pinprick test or the scratch test?
It looks like this.
Oh, you're
taking your pulse.
I gotcha. Yeah.
It's called the Cocoa Pulse Test. And I tell people, if you don't want to spend the money, I've just posted a blog on, if you go, I think thewholeathletepodcast.com, you can go to our website and get it to my blog page via there. But taking your pulse for 1 full minute before you eat something. And then after you, if your heart rate goes up more than 6 beats, you probably shouldn't be eating that food. It's causing reaction in your body right now. So
the 6 beats is just sort of like natural metabolism?
Yeah, if your food's causing allergic reaction like histamine in your body, then your body's probably reacting to it, because your heart rate, I'll notice, if I wear my heart rate monitor even during the day and it's on the TV screen, because we use MyZone in my studio, that suddenly my heart rate's 85 and I'm sitting there not doing anything, like, okay, what did I just eat? My heart rate's way higher than it should be, 50 something sitting here. And so if you take your pulse before you just find your resting pulse, resting heart rate, eat something, or you can just put it on your tongue, and your tongue receptors will tell your brain and your heart rate will change if it's good or bad.
I'm not sure if the app is still out there, but I know there's an app called Food Detective that did a similar thing to that. I don't know if it still exists. Same with
Sweetbeat, their app.
Oh, okay.
I talked to Rhonda about it once. Their app, Sweetbeat Life, has that food sensitivity on it too. So you can write it in. In nutritional therapy, they like take the pulse by your manually, not wear a heart rate monitor. But yeah, COCA pulse test has been around for a long time, but that's an easy way to do it.
Cool.
So I know you're short on time, so let's finish up. Do you have any other thoughts, questions, comments to share?
Well, the only thing I was going to just add onto that last thing is, like, certainly if those tests can give you sort of a hint to go in the right direction, even if it isn't exactly bang on because it is a new science, if it's at least giving you a hint of things that maybe you should try eliminating from your diet and see what happens, I think that would be a great way to use it for some clients, because sometimes doing the elimination diet, it takes time. Other factors change, confounding factors get involved, and then you're like, well, are you actually sensitive to that, or was it because you went on vacation for a week, or whatever that happens to be? So this would be a nice way to sort of narrow down that field of, well, the test says you are sensitive to these, so let's try eliminating them, see what happens. That's what I see as being sort of the real benefit out of that test in particular.
Well, just to add to that, to finish that thought, that I found, and I'm guilty too, that if you're going to pay for all these lab tests, you can have clients do it. But if you're going to follow through and listen or read to anything it says, because I have honestly I still like to have a little of the Kerrygold butter in my coffee when possible during the week, because it works for me and it feels good. But then if I'm actually allergic to it, if it's causing a reaction in my body, is that setting myself back? But you have to actually use results and do something with them to make them improve.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, I've got a Get Fit Guy episode coming out, not next week, but the week after, that's all about the activity trackers that everybody's wearing these days, and how there's
a trend to wear it, look good.
Yeah, like the vast majority of people stop wearing it. Like a third of the people stop wearing them after 6 months, and the majority of people stop after a year. And the reason is because they've done tons of studies that show that people who wear them actually lose less weight and improve their cardiovascular markers less than people who don't wear them at all. So I think there's just this whole idea of like the placebo effect, like, oh, I'm wearing my yoga pants and my activity tracker, so I'm going to get fit. But they don't do anything with the data. They don't even like learn how to look at the data and know what the data means. Like, it's like, my heart rate's 125. I'm like, well, that's terrible. Oh, really? Well, you're sitting still. Like, yes, that's terrible. Nobody's that bad, but you know what I mean. Like,
it's like wearing your Lululemon out. Just like, oh, I just came from the gym, or the guys that go to the gym just do the sauna or something, the executive workout, there's, I went to the gym, I worked out.
Hey, passive heat acclimation does help.
Yes.
I did a podcast about that. Go to Get Fit Guy.
Hey, and I bought the Sunlight and Sauna, and I'm calling it infrared treatment because I hate calling it sauna, because sauna people think I'm going to the club sauna. Totally different, and should do one on what mid, near, and far infrared wavelengths are about.
That's a little, again, like for
too much.
The quick and dirty tips kind of thing. That's a little too.
We'll just keep it on the Whole Athlete podcast.
Exactly. That's where.
And another good topic. I know I'm going to talk too long for you. So the last one, I heard this great topic. It might be good for my podcast, not yours, but some guy on Sunday speaking about the electromagnetic waves. Alexa. He was talking about, everyone's getting Alexas in their house, which I have one here. So she just heard me. I have one right here. Sorry, not talking to you. I have to get rid of it because every time you talk to Alexa, I'm just setting off signals to the cell tower. So this guy was talking, he's done all this research on electromagnetic waves, and they had someone with knee pain, and they did muscle testing, and ended up being Alexa causing the knee pain.
Now, I know we keep saying like we're going to wrap up, but one thing about that is like I live downtown Vancouver, and I moved here from downtown Toronto, and I know the idea of like having the kill switch in your house to turn off the power and turn off your Wi-Fi and stuff. I'm still exposed to 15 other Wi-Fi signals when I turn mine off. So it's kind of like
the purpose.
Sure, it probably helps a little bit to turn off my own Wi-Fi signal because it's the closest to me. Perhaps like my downstairs neighbor might, who knows, his Wi-Fi router might be right under my bedroom. I'm not sure. But I think we can really get ourselves a little carried away and make ourselves a little crazy with that kind of thing, unless you're going to go live out in the forest. And, and I know a couple of people who have done that for that exact reason, where they go out to the forest and then they can actually turn off all the power in their house and turn off their Wi-Fi, and there is no signal. That's amazing. That's definitely where we should be, but it's just not feasible for the majority of us. Like, you're in Seattle, I'm in Vancouver. It's unlikely we're going to escape that. So what do? We do the best we can and take care of our guts and take care of our brains and take care of our everything else, right?
Yes. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show and just chatting today about both of our missions and our whys and what we're trying to do and create impact in our world. So thank you. And we will listen to Get Fit Guy. What days does that come out?
Tuesdays, but it doesn't really matter. That's the great thing about podcasts. You can download them anytime you want.
And listen to that wonderful voice.
There you go. I usually talk a little more sexy though.
Yes. All right. Have a great day. See you later.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Whole Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at wholeathletepodcast.com. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.